Okay, so let's now start with the discussion of Eurocentrism. Uh, this critique of a particular way of thinking, which you find everywhere today. There is no single book, especially if it comes from any people who are critical people. Everybody discusses, critiques Eurocentrism, and Eurocentrism they find everywhere across all the disciplines. Um, you find people criticizing Eurocentrism. And it is this very critique of Eurocentrism that is somehow the point of departure of this debate about decolonizing social sciences. Yeah, I could also phrase it that way, that what the decolonization of social sciences opposes, tries to overcome, is Eurocentrism. Now, what is this Eurocentrism criticizing? What is the critique of Eurocentric views? Firstly, I should say that originally the notion of Eurocentrism critiqued during the Cold War period after colonialism. By the way, a critique, a term, a notion created by an Egyptian sociologist named Amin. In this original concept of Eurocentrism, this was a critique that accused the European society model of capitalism for claiming to be the center of the world and for trying to adjust the former colonies to this society model of capitalism. Eurocentrism was originally a way to argue against spreading capitalism towards the former colonized world. I should mention here that already in the way Amin was presenting this notion of Eurocentrism as a critique of spreading capitalism to the former colonized world, already was a little bit odd, in the sense that this was discussed as an example of a critique of modernity. I don't want to go in details here, that is another discussion. But as I will show later with a quotation from Amin, his critique, though it was a critique of capitalism, had some strange implications, which allowed to quote his concept of Eurocentrism also by people witnessing everything else than a critique of capitalism. We will come to this point. In fact, in a later debate, under this project of decolonization, starting around the end of the 20th century, that is, after the entire world, with the end of the Soviet Union, had become all over the world capitalist societies, this critique of a Eurocentrism opposed views, and that is what this notion is saying, centered on Europe. And it accused thinkers in Europe to create views about the world, views they gain from looking at the European societies, and by falsely applying these views on the societies in the former colonized world, they do not understand the nature of these societies in the former colonized world. In this updated critique, updated after the end, after the world had been transformed all into capitalist societies, after the Soviet Union ended their alternative society project. In this updated version of Eurocentrism, critique of Eurocentrism, this critique opposes remains of colonialism and is no longer, as it originally was meant by Amin, no longer a critique of spreading capitalism. And it is, in fact, for this very reason that the discourse using this notion of Eurocentrism as its main object of critique, it is for this reason that this debate was not called decapitalizing the world, but it was called decolonizing the world, and it was called decolonizing the world after there were no colonies anymore. So what it is telling is, though there are no colonies anymore, there are still remains of the colonial past continuing to exist in this world of capitalist societies. Before this critique of Eurocentrism, before this became a critique of theories, in these debates under the overall title of the project of decolonization, before this it was a critique against European policies.